Jasper Beamish Wooden Railway, episode 44, How George Crashed the Watermill. One day, George was coming along the road. He was not in a good mood at all. When he stopped by the airport one day, he teased Jeremy. "Ugh," said George. "Jeremy, your wing's in the way too much. If you went any closer, you would literally destroy my whole side." Jeremy felt hurt. "Hey," said Jeremy. "George, that's not very nice." "Well, it's pretty nice to me," laughed George, and he rolled away. What an unfriendly steamroller, thought Jeremy. That wasn't all of it. When George went across a field, he saw Trevor. He was coming along George's line. He was going very slowly. "You silly traction engine, get out of my way." And he banged Trevor out of the way so hard that he flopped onto his side. And George continued on. "Hey," said Trevor, "that's not nice." "Ha ha," said George. But George didn't notice something very important. He was racing over the rails, and then suddenly he realized he was on the wrong line, and he was going past the docks. "Oh no," said George. "Help! Help!" He couldn't brake because his driver had jumped off where he bumped Trevor, and there was the watermill. "Oh dear," said George, and he crashed into it, and he crunched up the quarry mine tunnel and banged onto the rails. "Oh dear," thought George. Oh dear, hoping everything doesn't come. But then he heard something blurring in the distance. Flynn was coming down very fast. He was racing to get to a fire. "Oh dear," said George. "Flynn, don't come up!" But it was too late. Flynn crashed off the rails, hopped onto another track, and then George and then Flynn was now pushing George all over the place. "Ah," said Flynn, "George, I can't see." But then something happened that George nor Flynn would have never imagined. They were going so fast that their front end slowly started to leave the rails. They went so fast that they were starting to fly. "What?" said George. "Ah! Oh dear, what are we gonna do? Oh no!" And his Flynn went down and flopped onto the airfields. "Ah!" said Flynn. "I can't stop." "Oh dear," said George. "Oh dear," said George. "Flynn, what are we gonna do? Looks like we'll have to release some weight, and then we'll have to land somewhere." All right," said George. "Here we go." And Flynn raced down and he rolled and he flipped all over and over for a long time. "Oh yeah," said Flynn. He rolled into a field and banged into Cranky hard, and it also knocked Salty off the rails. "Oh dear," said Flynn. "But wait, there's George." George was coming down very fast. He crashed the watermill again. He landed on the airport lights and smashed on his side and hit Patrick, and he wasn't very happy about it. George was damaged very heavily. "Oh dear," said George. When the Fat Controller heard about the accident, he was very upset. He drove up in Winston. "George," he shouted, "explain this behaviour at once," he shouted. Sorry, sir," said George. Me and Flynn were going so fast that we managed to fly, and looks like Flynn's tender landed on the runway. Yes, and it looked like it ran into Jeremy. "Yes, I know," said the Fat Controller. "George, I am not very happy with you. Now I will have to hire a load of extra workmen to repair you and Flynn because there's already a lot of engines broken down." And with that, the Fat Controller drove away in Winston. "Oh dear," said George, "this isn't good." As soon as George was lifted back onto the rails, he apologised to Jeremy and Trevor for being so rude. Now George has learned not to be a tricky steamroller, and he knew that when he crashed up to the water mill, all the water leaked out and caused a huge spiral, and even the quarry mine tunnel had a certain doom as well. George had surely learnt his lesson. Flynn said, "George, can we be friends?" "All right," said Flynn, "but only if you promise not to do something like that again." "Oh, I won't," said George. And with that, and Flynn and George had now become good friends.